So, Battlefield 6 released this week. Did it have some success? Maybe a little bit. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at Quick Bird Gaming, and I appreciate you tuning in for another weekly news wrap-up where we cover all the video game news that's fit to cover for the past week. In this case, we're looking at the week of October 5th through the 11th. We have a few stories for you. A possible hack over at Nintendo, though it hadn't been verified yet. Another milestone for the folks at Sandfall with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. We also have news of a potentially canceled game in its infancy, an Assassin's Creed game that might have been axed before it ever got off the ground. As always, if you are interested in a particular story, the timestamps for each story are listed in the description box, so feel free to go down there and jump to something that interests you. In the meantime, we got to start off with the big news of the week, and that is Battlefield 6. Okay, obviously we got a whole lot to get into here, so let's start with this PC Games in article from Friday the 10th of October. Battlefield 6 takes just an hour to leave Call of Duty's Steam peak in the dust. The Battlefield 6 player count on Steam has already soared past that of its open beta as the revitalized shooter hits the ground running. They said they've thrown down their gauntlet to their big rival, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, with a colossal first-hour Steam play count. And as we scroll down here, they said the full launch has reached more than 700,000 active Steam players in its first hour, which, remember, this obviously does not count gamers playing on the consoles, as they're not counted among Steams, and the consoles don't release their concurrent player count. We look here at this graphic that shows that Battlefield 6, it's at 718,000, and Call of Duty on Steam had only hit 491,000. Now, obviously, Call of Duty gets a huge portion of its player count from people playing on Xbox. So you take this with a grain of salt. However, this is a pretty significant achievement. We can flip over to Steam database and check it out. I'll go ahead and refresh real quick. And we look at, as of Saturday night on the 11th of October, you can see where they are currently. They hit almost 750,000 on a concurrent player count, and they're still sitting at about 500,000 today as of this recording of this video. So I would call this an absolutely colossal success. A ton of interest in Battlefield 6, which is good considering that I know Battlefield 5 and especially 2042, the last two games in the series, had significant issues and did not do as well. Now, some of this has obviously created some secondary unintended effects. Flip over to this IGN article from October the 10th on Friday. Battlefield 6 developer triggers queue system for launch as fans immediately face full servers. The game is out now, and in the blink of an eye, the servers became full with hundreds of thousands of players waiting to get in the action. That's not a typo. The queue line was hundreds of thousand players. And see this in this picture here, the screenshot. Game servers full. Current queue position, 295,000. So they had a lot of people trying to get into this game. And they mentioned right here what I said. It had a huge number of players on Steam, but the true concurrent number will be bigger because they don't have the console numbers. So they have enormous queues going on right now. And there's also been some other frustration. I'm going to flip over to this Game Rant article from Saturday 11th of October today. Battlefield 6 boss criticizes the EA app and tells players to use Steam. Battlefield 6 boss Vince Zampella has criticized the EA app for its launch day fiasco, which prevented a significant number of people who pre-ordered the game from playing it as soon as it was released. The executive went as far as to advise some fans to purchase Battlefield 6 on Steam, even if they have to refund via the EA app. And this says, EA's PC launcher has been causing headaches for Battlefield 6 owners from the moment the game debuted, though long queue times are to be expected from any massively popular multiplayer game on day one, which of course makes sense. The Battlefield 6 players who bought it on the EA app were reporting complete inability to play due to inexplicably failing content ownership checks. So there was some glitch with the app that basically said that people who had bought it, pre-ordered it, didn't have the correct permissions and couldn't get into the game. So obviously this was creating an immense amount of frustration. And so Vince Zampella, basically the guy in charge of I guess DICE and running Battlefield, took to X, formerly Twitter, to engage with fans. And here you can see one of his tweets. He said, I have yelled about I have yelled about EA app people. Any suggestions on next level of escalation? So he's been talking to them. And then somebody says, any news on this yet, man? This is unacceptable. 5 hours post-launch. And he says, can you refund and buy on Steam? Now that's very interesting for a high up level in the company, high up level person in the company to openly criticize the company at large in a public forum. I think that's pretty uncommon.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
But whatever, man. I'm impressed he has the balls to do that. So hopefully that works out for them. Now, as we scroll down here, they say that Battlefield 6 is compensating some players for the EA app outage. Anyone who tried and failed to log into the game via the company's launcher will receive bonus XP boosters and a premium version of the shooter's first day battle pass for free. So they are trying to compensate people who have had problems. And I read somewhere in one of these articles that they said that the issue had been ironed out about 10 hours after launch. So kind of a stumble, but it sounds like they're getting it figured out. Now, you might think some of these problems, the queues and the launcher issues, might have affected the game's rating. It doesn't seem to have, at least over on Steam. I can look at the Steam page here. And as of the making of this video on Saturday night, I'll do a quick refresh on it. It's got 83% positive of over 20,000 reviews. So 83% of the views were positive. And as I looked through, kind of casually looked through the negative reviews here on Steam, for the most part, there was no unifying factor that showed up in every review. You know, like if you looked at something like Monster Hunter Wilds and the negative reviews, it was almost overwhelmingly about the performance, and the performance issue showed up in almost every review, and that's why people were downgrading it. Here, that doesn't seem to be the case. There doesn't seem to be any one thing that everybody's honing in on. So some people, it may just not be their cup of tea, may not be the kind of game they want, but still, 83% is a pretty good rating. And obviously, this has been a huge boon for EA. I'll flip over to this GameSpot article from Friday, October 10th. It's generated $100 million on Steam from pre-sales reports. Now, this comes to us from analyst Reese Elliott of Alina Analytics, who said in his newsletter the game reached 1.8 million pre-sales on Steam alone prior to launch. Now, Alina Analytics isn't necessarily always right. In fact, sometimes their numbers are a bit dodgy. They are making an educated guess. However, given the number of people that are playing this game right now, I would not be surprised to find that this is the case and that this game has already garnered across all platforms, probably in the neighborhood of 2 million units sold, maybe more. We won't know anything further. We won't know anything further until EA actually releases some official sales numbers, but I think it's safe to say that this game has been a crashing success for them, just looking at the number of players engaged. This is very clearly a shot across the bows of Call of Duty, of Activision, Blizzard, and Call of Duty coming out. Now, I mean, do I think that this is somehow going to mean that Call of Duty 7 is going to be some kind of failure? Not in the slightest. I think Call of Duty has a very well-entrenched and loyal fan base of players who buy the games consistently every year. However, the attention that Battlefield 6 is getting and the good things it is doing over time will kind of force Call of Duty to evolve and to innovate, because if Battlefield 6 continues to get better and Call of Duty doesn't, that will ultimately chew into their bottom line. Call of Duty 7, I believe, releases, I want to say, on November 14th. So as of making this video, it's about 5 weeks away. And we will see what happens. Now, I imagine that a lot of the people playing Battlefield 6, when the new COD drops, they'll go over to check it out, so the numbers may dip. But the point is that if you have two of these franchises in the same space that are both putting out very well-liked products, it both forces both of them to try and raise their game, and that is nothing but good for the consumers. Even if they don't raise their game, the fact that they're both putting out good products is good for the consumers. If you like the online team shooter genre, right, you are eating well this fall. Okay, I want to step away from Battlefield 6 for a few minutes and talk about a few other stories. Next is this article from Video Games Chronicle, which was published on Wednesday, the 8th of October. Ubisoft reportedly canceled an Assassin's Creed game partly due to political concerns. The canceled game would have starred a black man in post-Civil War America. And as we look down the article, it says, according to current and former employees speaking anonymously to GameFile, the canceled game was planned to take place during the Reconstruction period that followed the American Civil War in the 1860s and 70s. It's claimed the game would have followed a black man who had been formerly enslaved in the South and moved west to start a new life. Recruited by this series of assassins, he would return to the South to fight for justice in a conflict that would, among others, see him confront the emergence of the KKK, according to interviews with 5 current and former Ubisoft employees. The employees said the game was canceled last summer by Ubisoft management for 2 reasons: online backlash around the reveal of Yasuke, a historically inspired Black Samurai in AC Shadows, and concerns around the political climate in the United States. And they say that one employee said, "I was terribly disappointed but not surprised. They're making more and more decisions to maintain the status quo, take no risk, no stand." And here's what I think is the salient point of this article. Ubisoft's new Tencent-backed subsidiary, which will be called Vantage Studio, started its first day of operation last week. So, what do I think happened here? I think the timing is interesting that we are talking about Ubisoft's not acquisition, but their merger, I guess, with Tencent and that new subsidiary forming. It makes me think that that had played a bigger role in it than what people are talking about. The way they laid out this game, the way they described it, with this black protagonist who would have been recruited by the assassins and fought against those injustices, really does seem to fit in the mold of the AC franchise. I think that if they had done it justice, that could have been a very compelling story and a very good game. However, I will say personally, I have no faith in Ubisoft to do this kind of story justice, because I don't think that in the current climate they could resist doing this without dragging modern day politics into it, which is going to be a turnoff and a red flag for a lot of gamers. A lot of people just don't want to deal with that. If they could keep it in the historical, they being Ubisoft, could keep it in historical context, that would be one thing. And I really start to wonder if because the negotiations for this merger between Tencent and Ubisoft were clearly ongoing for a long time before they actually announced it. They don't just do this stuff in the course of a couple of days. They had been talking about this for a long time, and it makes me wonder if this game was canceled this last summer, if Tencent hadn't kind of poked their finger in the chest of Ubisoft and says, "You're not going to make this game that's going to be divisive. You're going to make a game that's makes money." Speaking to Ubisoft as a large investor. And I wonder if this is, or even if you could see a scenario where Ubisoft, in the course of negotiating, said, "Look, we'll axe this type of potentially divisive game as a kind of a incentive to make the merger go through," as putting it out there as I'm trying to think of the right word. Incentive is, I guess, the best word. Putting it out there as a compromise as part of the merger. Makes me wonder how much more we're actually going to see of Tencent being involved in these type of decisions about what games made and don't get made. Now, granted, this is all completely 100% speculation. But then again, so is kind of this article. We're getting information from anonymous sources, and anonymous sources they range anywhere from the truth to, "I made it the fuck up." We don't know where the actual ground truth of this is. But and kind of the cherry on top of this, at least in my opinion, is that the game as outlined, that this conceptual Assassin's Creed game that was set in that era, in that Reconstruction era, featuring a black man with that kind of enemies list, actually makes much more sense as an Assassin's Creed game than Yasuke in AC Shadows. I think they would have been much better off pursuing that angle and then trying to shoehorn Yasuke in there. I know he was inspired by a historical figure, but there's a lot of sketchy information about his legitimate, the legitimacy of his influence and such in Japan as well. And I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but I think this would have been a better approach, just in my opinion. But anyway, I think it's interesting. I think this is not the last time we're going to see what is potentially a Tencent influence on what games are coming out. And it's going to be interesting from here on out. And on that note about making stuff up, there's a reason I haven't talked about Ghost of Yotei and its sales numbers yet, and it's mostly because we don't have a whole lot of official data yet. As far as I know, as of the evening of Saturday the 11th of Pacific time, Sony and Sucker Punch have only released a few snippets, including physical sales in Japan. We don't have real good numbers that have been made official, and there's a lot of people, a lot of controversy around this game, a lot of people who want it to do well, a lot of people who are hoping it doesn't do well, and a lot of people are just contorting the information we have and all the guesswork we have from people like Atlanta Analytics, and again from insider sources that say it's done well, or tweet accounts that just throw a number out there without any backing. We don't have a lot of official information, so I've resisted talking about it until then, and I will bring it up hopefully by next week, by the next video, the next news roundup. We will have some more official numbers. I really don't have a dog in this fight. I'm a PC player. It's not available on PC and won't be probably for at least a year. So it's, I'm just kind of watching from the outside. I know it's an interesting subject and people are interested in it. I will get back to it once we do have once Sony or Sucker Punch actually releases official numbers. We'll talk about it then. Okay, back to the news, and I'm going to touch on this Eurogamer article that was published today on Saturday the 11th of October. Hackers claim to have breached internal Nintendo data. And you scroll down here, it says, while the claim has yet to be substantiated, I think they meant to say, not unsubstantiated, a screenshot posted by the group shows a depository of folders that include Nintendo manuals, admin, dev assets, and more. It follows a similarly high-profile hack last month when the same hackers breached Red Hat's GitHub repositories. And it says, X-Account Hack Manic, which tracks, quote, verified real-world cyber attacks, shared a screenshot reportedly posted by the hacking group who said we do not have Nintendo topic files. And that tweet appears here on the screen. And apparently they showing this screenshot that they claim to have all these files. Nintendo has yet to comment publicly on the allegation. It's currently unknown if consumer data has been compromised. Well, we have just had a big Discord hack. Sony is constantly getting hacked. This is always a cautionary tale for people putting their information on the internet. We will be following this story here at QuickBird Games because there's not a whole lot it's been said about this so far, but I'm sure information is going to emerge. But anyway, there's a claim that Nintendo's been hacked, so act accordingly with your information. Next up is this Insider Gaming article from Thursday, October 9th. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 announces new content after crossing 5 million units. So this indie game has surpassed 5 million units sold, and they're celebrating this milestone with a big content update. They say Sandfall Interactive is working on a massive new content update for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This update introduces a new playable environment, taking the game's characters on a journey to a brand new location with fresh enemies, more surprises, and mysteries to unravel. Challenging new boss battles are arriving for late game players. They'll be able to try out new costumes for each member of the expedition, and they're adding new text and UI game localizations for other languages, bringing the total number of languages to 19 and more to come. Sandfall has already said that Clair Obscur is going to be the franchise name. They have other games set in this world. I read this week that they said that not everything is going to be the same kind of turn-based RPG. They don't want to get stale. So it looks like this company is really leaning forward into this universe, and we can expect to see more games, hopefully of the same high quality. No word on whether or not this content update will be a DLC or a free update, so we'll stay tuned. But more content coming for Clair Obscur. Okay, now that we talked about a couple of games where things are going really well, in the case of the smash success of Battlefield 6 and the ongoing success of Clair Obscur, and a case of it's relatively neutral but cautiously optimistic in the case of Ubisoft, seeing if 10 cents money is going to be put to good use. Now we have to talk about several dumpster fires in the industry. We're going to start off with this Game Rant article from Friday, October 10th. MindsEye devs published a letter criticizing the company. Current and former MindsEye developers have published an open letter criticizing Build a Rocket Boy's leadership, accusing it of mismanagement and several other missteps. And if you don't remember, Build a Rocket Boy is a company that was founded by some expatriate Rockstar Games developers. A Scottish studio founded by the former GTA franchise lead developer Leslie Benzies. Build a Rocket Boy was putting out MindsEye. It was supposed to be the game that was their smash breakthrough hit, and it just completely bombed, utterly bombed. And if you read into this article, the signatories allege that the studio subjected employees to 4 months of mandatory crunch time, 8 hours of overtime per week for all staff, which was not compensated with overtime pay. So they've signed this letter basically demanding all of this stuff from the studio, including an apology and changes in their behavior with as regards to their employees. A lot of people have already been laid off. Now, Build a Rocket Boy says they plan on relaunching MindsEye and fixing things. I don't know. I think they're screwed. I think this is, you've dropped the ball to this extent. I don't think it's possible to recover. You think about how many studios croak after one single bad launch. It's a studio like Sony could recover from Concord, but a studio like Volition couldn't recover from the MindsEye reboot.
Hey, Future Jonathan here, coming in with the edit. I'm sorry, I meant Volition and the Saints Row reboot. That is what killed the studio, they had nothing to do with MindsEye. Okay, back to the news.
One bad, especially one killer bad game can absolutely lay waste to a studio, and I think that's what's happening to Build a Rocket Boy. I think they're finished. And actually, that attitude is extremely concerning when I look at this PC Gamer article, which was also published on Friday the 10th. Remedy issues profit warning after FBC Firebreak's big overhaul fails to turn things around. Despite improved player and sales metrics after the update, sales have not reached Remedy's internal targets. They said just 2 weeks after launching its, quote, bold gambit, unquote, to save the multiplayer shooter FBC Firebreak, Remedy says the game is still underperforming to the point the studio has issued a profit warning for 2025 and says it's going to eat a big loss on the whole thing. The Control spinoff stumbled badly at launch, putting up a peak concurrent player count on Steam of just under 2,000, slumping to less than 100 after a month later. And they put out a big update on it a couple weeks back on September 29th. Yeah, they released it, which brought some significant changes. They got a few people back, but not enough. I flip over to the Steam database page, and you can see right here, 60 in game right now, and you can look at the chart. They've been at 100 players, actually less than 50 players for months. 17, 24, 11 players. This is embarrassing for a company like Remedy. And then they peaked up to about 250 after the update. Now they're slowly starting to tail off again with 60 players in game right now as of Saturday evening. This concerns me a bit because unlike Build a Rocket Boy and MindsEye to the previous article, I had no affiliation with. I actually liked Remedy's games. At least I liked Control a lot. I liked the first Control game. Alan Wake was okay, but it was well liked by a lot of people. A lot of people thought it was a good experience. It really baffles me how they make these fairly good games that got a little unique spin on them, and then they just completely mismanage their studio overall. I never understood why, when they released Alan Wake 2, they made it an Epic Games exclusive. It's still not on Steam, which I have to scratch my head and ask, what the hell were you thinking, Remedy? It took 2 years for that game to actually break even, and now it's to the point where it's just going to be residual sales. They're not going to make a ton of money off of it. Steam literally has like 80 to 90% of the PC market. I don't know why you would ignore that. Whatever Epic gave you was not going to be worth it. Then they try FBC Firebreak, which to me is really why, when you have a reputation of making games like Alan Wake, making games like Control, where you have these compelling, story-driven, first-person, single-player, well, they weren't first-person, third-person, single-player games, single-player games that have these stories and atmosphere, the vibe that they build for these games, that's their forte. A multi-player shooter was not. It was way out. I know everybody's trying to get into the live service business, but this shit needs to stop, because what's happening is studios are being killed by being forced to do it. I really think that's where BioWare's downfall started, when EA forced them to make Anthem. and they expended a lot of energy and a lot of capital on a game that ultimately failed, because the Anthem servers, if they haven't shut down now, they're shutting down this year. They will be soon. And I just don't understand where Remedy is coming up with these ideas. Stick to your strengths is all I can say to you. And I know it's odd considering I just said that Sandfall is going to be, they said they're going to try, not necessarily be doing turn-based RPGs again, even though the first one was hugely successful. But I think if they stick to their core competency of a strong single-player game, they'll be better off. So I don't know what this is going to mean for the future of Remedy. I believe Control 2 was in development. I hope this isn't going to destroy the studio. And they get shut down. I guess we'll see what happens. And there's this PC Games In article from Thursday, the 9th of October. Hyper Light Breaker won't make it to 1.0 as work on the promising roguelike ends. Okay, with lofty expectations stemming from its incredible RPG, Hyper Light Drifter, Heart Machine had a tough task ahead of it with Hyper Light Breaker, a co-op roguelike based in the same universe with striking visuals, packed with potential but failed to find its feet in early access. The studio has been working hard on turning things around with major updates, but it's confirmed that development of Hyper Light Breaker will be ending as Heart Machine goes through another round of layoffs. And I mean, just like previously, you can flip over to the, this is Hyper Light Breaker. They're getting 65% positive reviews, which is not great. And you can see their number of players. They're basically hitting sub 50. They get a peak when they get an update in. They'll jump up from under 100, under 50 or so, and then they'll tail off. They'll get an update, peak with an update, and then they'll tail off. 17 players in game right now. It's just another game that's been finished. And this article says that it came out in early access in January and quickly became apparent that it needed more time, even if this was an early access title. Performance issues and unsatisfying gameplay loop meant there was a lot of work to do. And now it's finished. I keep telling people that when you cite a game like No Man's Sky, you have to remember that is the exception. Most games that enter this death spiral never recover. And here is another example of it. So Hyper Light Breaker is kaput. All right, I'll end with this article from Nerdist, which was from Thursday the 9th of October. A Minecraft Movie 2 gets a summer 2027 release date. There's a big surprise. A Minecraft movie pulled in just shy of $1 billion at the global box office this year. This was a de facto guarantee we'd get a sequel. Now Warner Brother Pictures has announced that's exactly what it has planned for the summer of 2027. Further down the article, they say July 23rd of 2027 is the next release date. And it's just a testament to how enduring this franchise is. It's amazing to me that a game about hammering blocks could have such longevity and staying power. And don't think that I'm above it. I still play Minecraft and still enjoy it. So, the fact that people really enjoyed this movie, it made a ton of money. It was inevitable we'd get a sequel, and this will probably not be the last one. There will probably be a Minecraft 3 in the future too. No word on the plot or the story or what's going on, but I think the possibilities are pretty endless. So, for those who love Minecraft and love your block technology, more goodness coming your way. All right, I'm going to call it here. No matter how brief I try to make these videos, they always end up being longer. I just have so much to talk about. But that's, there's lots of news out there. Thank you for watching. Please do all the YouTube stuff, like and comment, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate all that engagement, and thank you in advance for that. So we will be back next week with another weekly news wrap-up to talk about some more of the subjects. Hopefully we'll have some more news on some of them. So I will see you all next week. Thank you for tuning in. You all go out there, live your best lives, and you all stay gaming.